Last year, we did this. All right, so this year, it's going to be more creative. It's going to be more gardening, more podcasting, more performance, and also more of the differences that make Detroit the cultural base it is. So just like last year we started with the fundraiser, we're starting with a fundraiser this year again. I know we can get there, and we're gonna get there with your support. Remember, this is a La Studio, the podcast performance experience right in the urban garden in the heart of a Detroit neighborhood. Please support this year for everything we're gonna give you. Welcome back to Detroit is Different, back in the podcast studios, and I am here with a very special guest. I know you guys are getting sick of me saying special guest, but guess what? If you're on Detroit is Different, you are a special guest because you're adding to the richness, the culture of the city that I love, you know, the American classic of Detroit. And Detroit actually gets beyond just the proper of Detroit. We have somebody that represents beyond the proper Detroit, but right next to Detroit, we have the mayor of Eastpointe, Monique Owens. How are you today?
I'm great. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Okay, well, definitely. It is cool to have you in full effect, and I know you have a story to share, and I'm ready to introduce so many people to it, as your story was a story that's already gotten a lot of acclaim in and around, actually, after the victory. When you were running, people was like, she running for mayor of Eastpointe. But then upon winning, people were like, it's a black woman that's the mayor of Eastpointe. It's like, Eastpointe? Like, yes, Eastpointe. So with that being said, it's great to have you here, and we just want to unpack some of this story. So your family in Detroit City, what brought your family up this way?
Oh, my grandfather, he's from the South, came from the South, worked for...
Wait. In all classic Detroit, you can't just skip over South because it goes in different segments when we talk Detroit. So yeah. Whereabouts?
Louisiana.
Louisiana.
Yeah.
Okay.
From that way, a lot of people from our history came from the South to get work here in the North, as we all know, and worked at GM. So okay. He worked for, the plant. Was able to take care of his family off of that. He had a background of, he's a veteran as well. So he went to the Army as well, came here, tried to find somewhere to work, and he found somewhere right here in the city of Detroit, took care of his family, and made a home for herself here in the city of Detroit. And so my grandmother worked for, white people all her life. She came from Louisiana herself, and that's all, she knew. Her mother's mother, sharecroppers and things like that. And so that wasn't too far from, that's my great-great-grandmother. So that's not too far away of slavery and sharecropping. People don't understand. It hasn't been that long from when we were slaves. And so that's all she knew. She had really no education, didn't understand politics. All she knew was hard work and determination. And I think that's where I get a lot of, my work and determination from, is my grandmother and my grandfather.
Okay, and that's so rich. And also, like I often share in a lot of these stories, the patterns of the Great Migration, where so many blacks from the South moved up north, kind of obviously run along the railroad patterns. Yeah. That's why it makes it so unique anytime I meet Detroiters that have family from like Arkansas or Louisiana, what I would say the further west. Because usually those people end up in Milwaukee or Chicago. I'm guessing you probably got a whole bunch of family in Chicago or something.
I do.
So to come a little bit further east of Detroit, being from Louisiana, because, it's layers of blackness even in that black experience. You got a lot of Alabama black folk here. You definitely got some Georgia black folk here.
Absolutely.
Even some Florida black folks here. So when we think about we think of what was happening in the Black Bottom, the real Lower East Side where black folks were always at, it was a bunch of Alabama going on over there. So some Louisiana in that mix is unique. What led your grandfather here, you think, other than going a little further west, like so many, I'm guessing, probably like of his brothers, sisters, and other family members, friends?
Well, back in those days, Michigan, especially Detroit, being part of Michigan, was home of the big three, And so a lot of people came here for the job opportunity and be able to, and especially what they were paying at that time was to African Americans a lot of money, certain, payments were the most money that they ever was able to make, other than the South. And so coming here and be able to, work hard, have a decent pay, and be respected amongst their peers to a certain degree. Because, at that time when they was working in a big three and plants, they probably still dealt with some racism and things like that. But it was still better than where they came from. So having a fresh start and having a new way of life and a better quality of life for their family, a lot of people took that, that journey and coming here. And I believe that's why my grandfather did that. He wanted a better quality of life for his family and wanted to start over and a new change,
That's deep. That's deep. So whereabouts Louisiana? You got to ask that question, too.
You know what? When my grandfather died, he died when I was young. Mm-hmm. So, part of Louisiana, I don't know exactly the part, so I'm still learning about my history and where he came from. So he died when I was really young, and my grandmother died actually when I had just ran for politics. So, and that's the thing with our African American grandmothers and great-grandmothers, we don't instill our heritage and our Black history. So then sometimes we don't know who we are and exactly where we come from and that lineage and things like that. So still trying to find, my lineage and and my roots is something that I am, trying to break those barriers for my children to know where they came from. And I think that's where we have a disconnect in who we are, because we can say we from Alabama, Mississippi, and then you don't even know really what part or those people there, and you don't know the connections you can make because you don't know who your family are, and that started a long time ago. But if we don't pass down the information of who we are, who our family are, is, and things like that, we don't know who we are. So we're going kind of forward blindsided, but it's up to us to find out those things. So, my grandfather died when I, like I said, was really young, and, was told small stories of the things that I told you and things like that. So still learning about, my past so I can better make better decisions for the future. And so sometimes you have to know what that past is.
And then sometimes that past is hard. Like it's a lot of folks that made it up this way. The great Jimmy Boggs of the Boggs Center is like, I ain't going back. Yeah. Because some of the things they were running from or leaving, I shouldn't say running from, because they were leaving some horrors. In Mayor Coleman Young's book, Hard Stuff, it opens with his family escaping Alabama from the Ku Klux Klan. Right. So some of those journeys in the Great Migration, as much as it was running concurrent for better quality of life opportunities with work, it was also with just living itself, as that was a tumultuous time when we look at that Jim Crow era of the South and what existed from that. And that first bastion, people like your grandfather and Jimmy Boggs, when we think of like that first bastion of Black folks to, be in the union and join these manufacturing plants, which, the Sojourner Truth Homes and so much like just come straight from a lot of these narratives. So much of the narratives, what neighborhood did your people grow up in and around Detroit?
We grew up over there, Mack and Buick.
Wow!
Yes.
So you all went to the center where the black experience in Detroit was.
Absolutely. Okay. Growing up over there, and the thing I didn't like about growing up on Mack and Buick was, having Indian Village, and you have a separation of class, so you got people that have mansions and are millionaires, and then you have people that are trying to make ends meet, what I'm saying? And they all are just one block away from each other, shopping at the same grocery stores. So I never understood that whole concept of, the separation of class and, and differences in that, because I'm like, what makes that person different? I know their house is bigger, but they got to eat the same food that I got to eat, what I'm saying? And so I just learned a lot seeing things that was around me, and I didn't want to separate, myself from who I was just because you made more money than me, or, you had this education, or you had two parents in the house. I still knew my destiny was still big. It didn't, just because you lived over here and I lived over there, I still knew what my destiny was more than what I seen and what I grew up around.
Okay. And that's such a, I guess it's kind of like Joy Road's Exit 9 is labeled like through music and certain street culture. Like people speak about Mac and Bewick as if it's like a scene from the Warriors movie in the 80s or something. But in reality, Mac has it's a culture of its own, like inside of Detroit, of like definitely a little bit of grime, creativity. It's always been some gardening over there. It's been a little bit of like, saying just a lot comes from there. Even like Detroit's rap culture, a lot of rappers are like right in that footprint or kind of came through that footprint. And, shout out to Alberta Tinsley Talabi, Honorable Alberta Tinsley Talabi, another woman that made great strides politically and with Mac Alive, that foundation and everything. What was it like being a kid in that neighborhood for you? What do you remember most? What was, what did you look forward to? What was that experience like?
Well, I love going to Bustle Family Center right over there. So it was, dynamic and fun, and the neighborhood.
As a West Sider, I gotta say the East Side Bustle. East Side Bustle. It's Bustle was such a impact of Detroit. It's two rec centers at the Bustle.
Yes.
You got the East Side one and the West Side one. Because West Siders just didn't, but continue.
Yeah. So in the neighborhoods were good. I think sometimes we take pride in saying, oh, I grew up in a hood as African Americans, like that defines us. But as African Americans, we have good neighborhoods. Our neighborhoods that didn't start as so-called the hood, and we say, yeah, that's where I grew up from. We need to take pride in saying, if you have a good neighborhood, that's where I grew up. We take more pride in saying, yeah, it was bad over there, and it made me. But sometimes good neighborhoods can make you too. So I think sometimes we forget that those neighborhoods that African Americans come from, good families, good neighborhoods, good structure. Everything is not where we come from. It's a hood.
Okay.
And I think we do that all the time and take pride in that. It's okay to say, this is where I come from and this is who I am, but don't always put so much emphasis on, that we live a bad quality of life, because we don't. We come from, Black people were millionaires. Black people had their own homes. Black people were also Republicans. Black people, own businesses and were doctors. So we don't, so let's take pride in those things. Let's take pride in saying, oh, we had good streets. Our lights were on. It was two families in a home. We don't talk about it enough, but we take pride in saying, yeah, that was a hood. My homie got shot over there. And it's like, hold on, that's not all who we are. We're more than that. How about let's talk about, I grew up in a neighborhood, where there wasn't shooting. We don't talk about that enough and take pride in that all the time. So we need to restructure how we think and what we say, because we're not our neighborhoods. We're not our hoods. We are the individuals. And our neighborhoods and our hoods don't define who we are.
I love what you said. And really that's the premise of a lot of these stories, to just unpack some of it. And as you spoke to something that's just big, it's understanding that it's a tapestry. Like my neighborhood. I mean, on this block, it's, as I tell people, if you want to get into what I call black collar life, if you want to do something street, it's some street options, but it's so many more options than the street options that exist in these communities and have always existed. But if you want to get into, something that definitely ain't coloring outside the lines, that the law may look at as a little bit not in the books, those options exist as well. And I think those options exist in all communities.
Right.
It's just that the form that exists in our community, just due to media, messaging, it's more prominent. Even my favorite art form of hip hop, like it becomes more prominent as if it is that. And you spoke specifically to a rec center as something that stood out as a child. That's unique. Because people always talk about rec centers and music and exercise are so needed for kids, but usually the funding is just like non-existent around the time when these connections are made. What was the rec center like for you when you were a kid?
You had the swimming, you had, interaction, being able to meet other kids and things like that. We don't have that right now like we should. All the kids know is swipe, and things like that. TikTok and things like that. I know that's our next generation of what we're going into, but kids don't know how to speak to each other. I couldn't wait to go meet another kid and say, "What's your name? Where do you live?" Or sitting on a porch and running down the street and playing hopscotch. Those things are what created me as as a family neighborhood. Getting to know my neighbors. We don't know our neighbors anymore. We don't know kids don't play with kids anymore. If you ran down the street, you knew the neighbor saying, "I'm going to tell your mom," or "Come here, I'm spanking you." You were scared of your neighbors because they were like your parents too. And so that is like wholesome living. And I think we got away from that, So growing up on Mac and Bewick was like a home for me. It was what I knew. It was, it was safe. It wasn't killing, shooting, because when you say those signature names, oh, you grew up in Mac and Bewick, it's like, oh, you out cold. You're like, no, well, now it might be in certain areas, but where you live doesn't mean that you live bad, because people have to understand. I can talk to a lot of Caucasians and Jewish people. They lived in these areas too. They lived in Detroit too. They're from Detroit. I mean, Detroit is really Detroit. So it was people that were French that lived here, that lived on Mac and Bewick. If you see a Caucasian say, "I lived on Mac and Bewick," they're not going to, are you going to say, "Oh, you grew up in the hood"? They don't talk like that. So why do we, use words and terms that when we grow up in certain areas that, oh, it's just automatically hood. But other groups live in those areas too, and they don't describe it as that. So I think sometimes we degrade our own well-being in our own neighborhoods by defining what that neighborhood is because of a group that lives there. Just because you're African American or don't make a certain amount of money doesn't make it hood. That's all.
So
that's all, folks.
Within that comes like the next big story. Your mom. What did she do? What was it like growing up, looking at her navigate life as you were younger?
My mom went to King. Most of my family went to King.
KC.
Yeah, so,
Crusaders.
the Crusaders and things like that. So Bustle, King, and all those things. So
it was all in that footprint.
Yeah, exactly. And so, and we grew up very religious. So my mom,
What church?
Pentecostal. We grew up Pentecostal Church of God. So, I have no earrings.
Okay, so you got to give us the pastor. You got to give us the name of the church. What?
Yes, Pentecostal Church of God. It was at the North End, and we were very long skirts, no earrings, no tattoos, no coloring of the hair, and all those things. And I'm grown now, so I done did all that. So sorry, Pastor. But, so growing up in a very strict environment and having structure, that's all I know.
Were you one of the kids that went to church like Thursday through Sunday?
I went Monday through Sunday because we went to a church school. The church created a whole school. Okay. So, it's like, really, Mom? So I went to that school from kindergarten to 12th grade.
Wow.
So, so being in that structure all your life and living a certain way all your life and not believing in politics and not believing in voting, we were so close to the same type of culture and studies of Jehovah's Witness tool. So it was so similar that people thought we was Jehovah's Witness, and so, but we weren't. So we didn't believe in holidays and things like that, and so moving and going, redirecting my life away from what I was taught and all that I knew was different for me because that's all I knew, and God was able to open my mindset to the world that we live in because, as we are Christians and as we do know the Word of God, we still have to live in this world. And you want people that are in these positions in leadership to know God and have a heart and to have a conscience. And so, so shifting to another era in which I never thought I would go. I never thought I was going to be a mayor or a council person or create history and things like that. Those are just people I know that create history. I didn't think I was going to be a history maker. But like I said, as a child growing up in that area, I knew it was more for me. I just didn't know what that was.
So in this space, were you? Because I definitely know the arc of a child. Teenagers are rebellious no matter what. You could have grew up with your dad and mom being rock and rollers, and you'd have been like, I hate this rock and roll. I'm gonna go to the church. That's just I think the exploration of the transitioning from adolescence to adulthood is to challenge what you know most.
Right.
But being in a Pentecostal church, in that house. What do you think drew your mom there as that foundation for you as a child? What do you think she found there as a place of as safety and guidance for you as a child?
Well, she grew up in that church. My grandfather, he was a elder there, the one who worked at GM and things like that. And my grandmother, urged her and things like that. So they instilled that in her, and she instilled it in us. But she saw different things that she didn't want to push too much in us, and make it too strict. And so, growing up in a Pentecostal school and not understanding why it was so strict and why I can't think outside of the box when my teachings is God is a big God, but yet when I think big, I felt like I was sinning. So I didn't understand that. It's like, okay, God wants me to think big, to do big things, but you're somewhat, to me, you're restricting me from that because everything I do feel like it was a sin. I'm like, well, how does that work? So, just asking God, and this is me at a young age, trying to find myself and trying to find, who I'm supposed to be, So when you're reading the Bible and they're teaching you how to walk this line, but in this world, the line is not always straight. You're going to go into some bumps and bruises. And how do you deal with those things? You have to, get some bumps and bruises to know how to deal with them. All of them don't have to be on your own, figuring out on your own, because the Bible teaches you how to deal with certain things. But at the same time, when you're so sheltered, like I was sheltered. You still have that curiosity. Adam had the curiosity, right? And he ate the apple, and so did Eve. But once you have that curiosity and you go outside, they still had God to actually help them, because when you're in this box, you always have curiosity, right? So you're taught to don't do this, don't do that, don't do this, and then you're gonna be like, okay, I know why not, but let me try it anyway, just to see it, and so I want to try different things. I was always open-minded. Even my teachers to this day, they, when I remember I got in trouble because I was so open-minded to reading and doing things. I remember I brought a Source magazine. I know you remember the Source magazine, right? Had Biggie, Lil Kim, and everything, and I was a big rap fiend. Oh my God, I had to hide that from my mom. I'm like, okay, how you gonna be this Pentecostal girl? You love, Lil Kim, you love Biggie, you love all these people, you love Nas and all this stuff. It's like, oh, but this is who I was, So I remember I left my Source magazine on the desk, and I meant to hide it, And so I left it there, and I got a call because I missed school today. I got a call from my friends. They were like, Monique, guess what? The teacher found your Source magazine, and she put it on her desk. I was like, what? Because I was a little sassy little something. I'm like, what? So I went to school. I was ready. I said, excuse me, because we called each other sister, brother, elder, pastor. My teacher at the time was Sister Johnson. Shout out to Sister Johnson. She's still listening to this right now. She probably remember it. And I said, excuse me, I heard you had my magazine. She said, what you say, young lady?
Hilarious.
Well, I bought that magazine, so it's mine. So she was like, look, what I'm saying? Like, hold on now, And so because everything that I bought was mine, my mom was a single mom.
Let me stop you for a second. For young people watching, never approach a teacher in that manner.
Never.
Just charge it to the game.
Yes.
Charge it to the game. Miss Dean, my counselor from 8th grade, still has my West Side Connection cassette tape.
With the Source magazine, no, not even.
Yeah, no.
But you know what? That,
charge it to the game.
And I was a very respectful child. It was just certain things meant a lot because reading the Source was like my outside, world of not everything church. So whether it was talking about what was going on in the streets, what they were talking about, because Biggie and Lil Kim, they didn't grow up, churchy and all that stuff. I think some of them went to church, but they didn't grow to, live their whole lifestyle like I did in church. So they had a different perspective and outlook on life. And I want to know that. So I used to get magazines to read about certain things, and it was weird because I had to hide it, because some of that stuff had, cuss words in it and things like that.
The references,
and
it's a reason why Luke invented the parental advice.
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely. This is, you mentioned Adam. All I'm thinking in this story is Sister Act 2 and Warren Hill's character.
I would be right, exactly. So it's like I just wanted. I was trying to find who I was, and that I love to rap. I was a class clown at the time. always outgoing and outspoken, you know, and my teachers didn't. And I used to get kicked out of school for that because it was like, okay, what scripture she didn't, you know what I'm saying? Like, hold on, she's not following, you know, the rules. And I'm like, the rules are being myself, finding who I am, and loving, and y'all embracing that. And, you know, they didn't embrace who I was as a child. They tried to shut it down and shut it up, and they couldn't. And, you know, my mom used to come up to the schools all the time. I remember when I came to school with one piece of purple in my hair. Oh, my God. I think they were saying you going straight to, you know what, you cannot wear purple, pink, or nothing. But it pushed me to say because.
I saw that Crush on You video.
Yeah, I was like, hold on now.
I want that.
I got to have it. Yeah. So it was just, you know, and then just wearing that and expressing myself. And I'm like, okay, so you saying I'm going to go to hell because I got a pink piece of hair in my hair, or because I want to wear earrings, or because I want to do this? I was like, God is not like that. He's bigger than that. You know, I'm not going to live my life perfect, and I don't to this day. But at the same time, I know, you know, God doesn't define where people are going based off how they look, you know. And I knew that as a child. And so my mom used to come into the school like, y'all not going to wear a little hairnet. Like, she just, you know, because at the time she divorced my dad and was a single mom at the time. So she didn't want you to keep bothering her child who's expressing herself, who's smart. I always got A's. I was at the top of my class. I graduated valedictorian. So it wasn't about my knowledge. It was about me finding who I really was and expressing that and showing that I am not in a box, you know. And so just, you know, gearing, you know, at that time, even as a child, you can see me floating away from what my teachings were of, you know, of being in a box. My teachings of God didn't stray away, but I just took my teachings of God and say, okay, he's bigger than this. You know, so when I became a comedian, to a police officer, to all these different things, you know, people didn't understand it, but they knew me. You know, the people I grew up with, they said, yeah, that's Monique. We knew her. She was always a class clown. She was always outgoing. She was always outspoken. She didn't care who it was, but she always voiced what her beliefs were. And so I'm the same person to this day.
So as you share that, you touched on a couple other things in life that happened and impacted. And I would say this too, and I was asking just, you know, what was your mom's perspective? Because sometimes, you know, when we think about community, some of the key things that define communities deal with the resources for children. Right now, just due to a lot of laws that have shifted that were systemically racist, as we know, the quote-unquote redlining, as it defined, like the red lines that were drawn around, you know, districts where that excluded Black people from owning properties. I mean, even this house I sit in right now is very unique because this was a Jewish community at one point in time when my grandfather bought this home. So it was rare for him to get the GI Bill from World War II and actually be able to purchase his home. And you can no longer exclude on race alone, though there are other exclusionary tactics. And one of the key exclusionary tactics is, quote unquote, good school district. You know, so when we think about community, we often define community around children, which is defined around a good school district, which is, i.e., good school district usually means there ain't that many Black folk around here. You know what I'm saying? The more Black folk that usually enter a school district, the more the school district is rated bad. You talk to a realtor, they can't tell you what they used to say, because I can only imagine in the 1940s, they were probably like, hey, there's a bunch of spooks that live on that street. You don't want to go there. You know what I'm saying? Whereas now to be like, hey, it's not that good of a school district over there. This has so much socioeconomic impact as the value of a home can be lended upon to pull out more money to possibly pay for college, possibly pay for a medical procedure, possibly, you know, just refinance your home because you need to make improvements on your home, like different things like that. But, you know, things like a school district have a lot of impact. So that's why when I ask questions like that, you know, parents are very eager to do so much to end up with what they consider the best school district for their children. Because you rarely meet a parent, even if the kid breaks them through everything, you know, every emotion that they don't want to go through, that parent still wants to have a school district that, a school opportunity for their child that is optimal. So it's unique as you tell that story about a school of faith, a religious-based school, being that place where your mom found a center and a grounding for you as a child. And then beyond that, like I say, as a teenager, you're definitely gonna challenge. That's what we do. We challenge.
Absolutely.
The smarter the teenager, the more challenging it's gonna be. You know what I'm saying? Sometimes I'm sure your mom was like, "Man, if my kid was dumb, I wouldn't have to deal with this." You know
right,
exactly.
Like,
a slower kid, you can just be like, "Yeah, we just doing that today." You know, a smarter kid, like, "Why are we going this way?" And da 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 da. And they doing it like this in Baltimore, and in China they doing this, and it's like, what? I'm not trying to talk about China. I'm just saying that right now, as of this time today, you washing dishes.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying? I don't want to hear nothing about Japan and what kids do there. You know.
Exactly.
But with that being said, now you're in a position like that. You're mayor of a city. And that puts so much is interconnected with that. Like a lot of people are relying upon you solidifying that decision that they've made so that they do have a home and a space, because so much of these life decisions are built on and around children. As much as I find it very unique as, you know, that children are so thought about how we make actions, but so rarely engaged with directly. You know what I'm saying? It's like, it's so much care about children, but it's less care about the specific who that child is. You even have a children's book.
I do.
So I want to talk a little bit about that, because that kind of goes into that as you're talking kind of to the inner child in you. So what led you into that world, and being in the position you're in now? So much of it, I'm sure, just relies on, like, you know, I'm just going off the top of my head. I think people feeling like they're in a city where their children can thrive.
Right. And I thank you for that question. And so me doing this children book is pretty much going back into how I was taught, not knowing. You know, I didn't really know the dynamics of politics until I was, you know, in my late 30s. And that's why I'm talking about when you're growing up a certain way in a box and you're sheltered, you're kind of sheltered from the world and how they think and what they do and how things are governed. And so I said, I don't want children to grow up like me and be miseducated, misinformed, or just don't know. So I started this book, you know, with my daughters who are twins, and saying, Mom, what's a mayor? And I created my book off that question.
You got to flash the people.
Mom, and it comes with a whole gavel. So, yeah, because I got to, you know, shut it down with the gavel. You know what I'm saying? So hopefully when kids are in class, they don't have the source. They will have Mom was the mayor, you know, reading that. So I wanted kids to understand the roles of government and also how they can play a part in those roles. So this book is not just for children. This is for adults as well. Okay. You know, when I ran my election, everybody was happy to have representation from white to black to Republicans to Democrats because, you know, it's a nonpartisan role. But, you know, I take into, you know, to consideration all things that people believe in, you know, and including what I believe in, you know. And so when people elected me, they were excited, they were happy. But, you know, from another standpoint, not saying other cultures don't know, but I have to always talk about my culture because that's what I deal with the most, you know, when I'm talking to people, is they didn't know what a mayor did. They were excited to have someone that looked like them from their old neighborhood as a representation and saying, yeah, we got somebody that can represent us. But what you do again? So, you know, I said, so this is more of a family book, an all-around book to get us started to knowing who we are voting for, why. And guess what? You, too, can be the next mayor. And so sometimes we hide things from each other, or we feel like society is hiding things. Like, we can't be a congressperson or a president. It seems so untouchable. It seems like we're reaching for something that cannot be accomplished, or you have to have this education to get it, or you have to grow up this way. And I'm like, no. Let me show you. It's this simple. You can make a difference, too. Don't complain about it. You have the power. And I think sometimes we don't know what the power that we have in us. So that goes all the way back to when I was a child. Talking about power is talking about God. And God puts power and gifts in each every one of us. But the thing about it is we don't know how to tap into those gifts. We start relying on people to do things for us. We start relying on the government to fund our schools, to make sure that, this is getting done, that is getting done. And we take our independence and our power and give it to somebody else. And then when things aren't getting done, all we do is sit and don't do nothing about it. But everybody has the power to change the law. Everybody has the power to amend one. And everybody has the power to sit at the table. And I'm like, let me write this book and let me show you how to do it, And I'm a prime example of that. So, telling my story of what I didn't know. I didn't grow up from this. I came from a religious background. So this is a person that's spiritual and still saying you can still be spiritual and sit at the table too. And we need more spiritual people at the table because things are done in a different way. It's not done in your personal agenda or the other person. It's like, okay, once you pray about it and figure it out, you're going to do it on God's agenda. You know what I'm saying? So you're still at the table. You're still have the title, but the person who is supposed to help you run and help you lead is the one above. And sometimes I think people get in these positions and forget who gave you the power, and they forget how to use it. And we get so excited and get giddy, and we use these titles, and we run with it and use it as a celebrity thing. Because in Michigan, you can be a political celebrity. Come on now. And people use that to use that to get in the door, and that's fine. But when you walk in the door, are you using that title to help other people get in the door, or it's all about you? And so the book was created again for children to grow up learning about leadership, learning how to tap into their power, and also share those concepts with their parents. So we're building family structure. That's what I was talking about before. Family structure. We're talking about governance. We're talking about power. We're talking about leadership. And those are the things that I grew up with. So I didn't grow up in a hood. I grew up in a neighborhood that probably turned into a hood. So, but again, that did not define me. And if you live in a hood, change your hood to a neighborhood. Don't be happy with and don't settle. And I think we came to a point in our lives where we settled with what was given. And then that's why I said this book is talking about taking your power and changing the dynamics. You took this space and made it to, a place where people can do things, tap into their power at little to no cost. You didn't have to do that. But you said, you know what, I'm going to use who I am and my vision to help other people with their vision. And that's what this book is about, too.
That's powerful. Last year, that's very powerful, as I'm a strong proponent of some of the information is just tougher to find. My grandmother was definitely big on voting. I remember we were in line as kids to go vote for Jesse Jackson back in back in '88 with her, and definitely my mom was big on that too. And my mom even used to tell me, back when she was at Central High School, they had a local government class. Most government is given from a national perspective, but even from a national perspective, at the collegiate level, with my bachelor's degree, I was only introduced in my government class. Really, it was more about the Constitution and foundation of the Constitution, and the way Madison and those guys almost got into a fight, which really never really was resolved, because leaving there led to the Civil War. It just took some decades later for the South to be like, we don't really need y'all anyway, because we kind of still mad at this three-fifths compromise thing. But it never really talks about local governance. Last year we did a special project, Detroit is Different, partnered with Riverwise Magazine, where we spoke about the different government systems specifically to the local election in Detroit. And in learning that, my project manager enlightened me on so much, because digging through some of these local ordinances, it's unique. Just finding out that states basically sanction municipalities or townships or villages to have their own charters. So Detroit has their charter, and we choose what's known as a heavy mayoral system, meaning that the mayor has so much executive control. But also there are other bodies where council can have a shared control. You can have a mixed bag where you kind of have a city manager, almost like your city council president acts as making some mayoral decisions, but executive decisions are shared. And right now, I know a couple of you guys are falling asleep right now. But get that book, and you're going to learn this. And some of these terms you really need to know because these things impact you. You need to know the difference between what an executive and legislative branch does, and also how that even impacts the judicial branch, as it's so many things happening right now before our eyes. The flooding that impacted many Detroiters, and just Southeast Michigan itself. Those are dominoes where you intersect multiple bodies of executives. So it's like county, different mayors from different cities, you know, and many legislators, you know, up to the federal government. So, and then you end up with, like, you know, walking downstairs looking at your basement and you're like, oh man, I heard FEMA giving money. And now you're on Instagram Googling FEMA, or searching FEMA. Instead of knowing what to do. Hence, books like that can help you know what to do. You know what I'm saying? So this is where, like, I don't want to get too government class on you, but this stuff becomes very important when you're trying to know who to talk to. You know, even when it comes to roads. Some roads are state roads. Some roads are city roads. Some roads are county roads. You driving down the street hitting a pothole and you thinking, oh man, I hate the city. Could be the county.
Exactly. And so a lot of it sounds like you read the book because you know a lot. But some of the things that you pointed out is in the book. And what I like about the book, it has a definition area where people probably heard these words and didn't know what they meant. And, you know, I want people to be, you know, educated to a point where they know something. You know, something is better than nothing. And I always like to be in a room where you might not get everything that person's saying, but you're able to go into and talking into conversations. You get to understand what people are saying. So, you know, this is just a basic form of what a lot of people don't know. You know, a lot of people probably didn't know a lot of things that you just said, but it's a conversation piece. They can be part of the conversation. So if somebody asks them a question, they know something where people can add to that. So we want people to be a part of the conversation. And so this book is actually one of a series of other books. So you'll see Mom was the mayor. Mom was a congressperson. Mom was a senator. You know what I'm saying? So I am the new Schoolhouse of Rock. Was that school? Yeah. So we remember I'm just the bill. So and things like that. So what I love about this book is I'm going to do a different series, but in every book, it's a person that was the first. So it's like Black history. So, if I do Mom was the president, of course you're going to see President Obama. Mom was the vice president. Come on now, Kamala, and vice versa, like that. So you want to get a glimpse of who did it first, because when we grew up, and our history book said, this president, that president, nobody looked like us. I don't remember. Do you remember that? I don't. And so these are the new history books to me. So it's like, somewhat of, government, who's part of government, local, to state, all the way up to the president of the United States. So, and a lot of people don't even know what a counselor is, and things like that. An ambassador. These are, people that work for the U.S. government. These are actually positions and jobs and how to get that from the president and things like that. And diplomat. We don't know how to do that. I'm still learning, and that's okay that we're still learning. But let me put it in a book and, do the research and help you get a concept of what's going on around you, because once you see what's going on around you, you might want to be a part of it. And let me show you how.
I think it's very key and very important, especially when it comes to local government, because most of our orientation, I know my orientation to a lot of local government, I learn about it from people, which I get I love social capital. I mean, I'm on a podcast talking all the time, as you all see. Sometimes we go 2 hours deep, but you're going to get, even from me, if I give you information, you're going to get it with my bias. Sometimes you want it with minimal amounts of bias. I'm not saying books aren't biased, because sometimes they can be too, but at least sometimes when you can read between the lines and hear it in your own voice, you hear things differently, because Detroit was one of those meccas where the history books aren't given in that text, but this was the Detroit I grew up in, was a stronghold for Black political power. With that stronghold for Black political power, it comes with certain trade-offs.
Right.
You know, certain things, obviously, you know, it's the classic. You know, the black guy get in there, you ain't gonna get the same resources that others had. And some of that is systemic racism. Some of that is just the infrastructure isn't built. Some of that is possibly just timing. Like it's many nuances that go into this mix. With that being said, I do have just what has been the response to this book enlightening people to something from a local government perspective, because most times people only really think about federal government.
Right.
And federal government, I'm like the opposite. Not saying that federal government doesn't matter, but I'm way more concerned about my local government than I am about federal government. I feel like sometimes federal government, not saying that you can't make an impact or you can't make waves, but local government, I've seen winds of change happen. Federal government, it's a lot more steps in that mix.
Right.
You know, how has the response been enlightening people to local government?
I think people seeing someone that looks like them was enlightening right then and there without me even saying nothing. So sometimes when people didn't really pay attention to who the mayor was of Eastpointe till they found out, you know, that person was black. Oh, then they got all type of questions, because the reason being behind that to a certain degree is it's someone that I can talk to. I feel comfortable. I won't sound stupid or ignorant if I don't know how to do something. And so sometimes when we see people at the table that look like us, you feel more comfortable and you can engage more. And so I did that. That's a lot what I did like. But the other part, don't start blaming me for something I just got into, because I am African American. And so sometimes when you're African American, things don't go a certain way, or the crime been bad, but since they just found out you black, it's because of you. It's like no, you know, I came into a city, or you can come into a position where things need to be rebuilt and, you know, and redone, and you have to and it takes time to redirect that, you know. And me having a background as a police officer and things like that, it takes time to do those things. But I can't tell people, okay, don't do this and that. People are adults, and every city has crime and things like that. But teaching people in this book about what some of the roles I do, not all of the roles, but some of the basic roles and how to become one is a start. And then, like you said, once people know about local government and how that works, people start educating themselves, because a lot of times when Detroit is so big, and so respect to, you know, the mayor of Detroit, I always give respect to those in leadership, you know, whether people have their own mindset about who they are. I have to respect it. But, you know, coming from Detroit, it's so big, you know, you're taught and trained a certain thing that, you know, you see a building, oh, I can just make that building, you know, a shoe store, or, you know, a hair salon, or things like that. And then when you come into an area and then you think you can do the same thing, and then, you know, you need architectural work or things like that, and you're getting charged, and you don't know about zoning and planning and things like that, because sometimes we're not educated that city has a charter, like you said, and it has laws on how to bring your business there. And then they say, okay, well, let me go talk to the mayor. You know, they're giving me a hard time, and they're racist and stuff. Like, you know what? That might be the case. I don't know until I investigate it. But how about you might just not know the rules, the regulations, and the laws. And so, and that's why I like to be there too, because I want to try to pull us away. Not saying things aren't racial. I'm not saying that. But when you're educated first, and you know your stuff, and then you're still pinpoint, and then you still see the ratio, now you're playing me, because I know the laws. I know what I'm doing. And if you don't give me X, Y, and Z, now it might be based off certain things. It might not be race. It might be a woman. You might, whatever dynamic it be. It might be a lot of things that why you can't get where you're at. But I want to teach, you know, all people, but I always go to, you know, African Americans again, because that's who I am, and that's what I'm around, and try to bring up to that level. You know, if somebody's up here, that's a group of people, I'm not, and then I see people down here, that would be, you know, very ignorant of me, and not try to bring them up here so we can have a real conversation. So as African Americans, you know, we have a lot of things that we're trying to get up here at the table. And so it's my job to make sure everything is equal. And so in order to do that, we have to be educated and know what's going on. And once you're educated and know what's going on, then you have a clear understanding what's going on around you. Everything is not going to be racial to you. Everything is not going to be black and white. Sometimes you just don't know. But then when you know and you see things not right and still not given to you, and that's another thing, because I'm just sitting here, I'm not just saying just because I'm a mayor, I don't deal with racial stuff. Of course I do. I'm the first black mayor of a city. So, I deal with challenges all the time, not only from white people, but from my own people as well. So, and I can be highly educated. I was a police officer. I, went to, did some training at Harvard. So I have the background and the education. And sometimes that's still not enough. Especially as African Americans, it seems like it's never enough. But even though it's never enough, the education, your experience, your money, your class is not enough. Still know it.
I think the advantage of like what you said in knowing, and you spoke to something that is big as an entrepreneur. You leverage the risk. I mean, they say entrepreneur, risk taker. That's what we're doing. We're taking risk doing this because we're, I'm creative with this expression of my business and launching my own path. I think when people think that, or in my opinion, if you're an entrepreneur for money, you should probably do something different because the money won't ever equal the energy and investment you're putting into it. Hence, that whole when people say follow your passion, it can be more fulfilling than just the emptiness of chasing a dollar. With that being said, you make the decisions that work best for you. But you spoke to something big: permits, zoning, knowing where things go, and these zonings and permits sometimes go back. It's an issue going on over here in my neighborhood. Sometimes these zonings and permits can go back to like the 1880s.
Yes.
When things were drawn up. And then having the right legal representation to fight this. I mean, can you do things on your own without an attorney? Yes, you can definitely do things without an attorney. But when you're dealing with judges, I don't know how many of you all ever been to.
That you can elect yourself.
I don't know how many of you all ever been to, even the ones you elect, ever sat in the courtroom, and I welcome any of you all to sit in the back of a courtroom. You're a public citizen, you can, and you just see the nature of a court proceeding, and it's certain etiquette, it's bench etiquette, even dealing with an attorney that attorneys dealing with a judge, attorneys can have versus you as a public citizen can have. Not knowing how to approach the bench can get you thrown out of court itself. So the whole brash nature of like, I'm gonna just do it myself, sometimes can get you further down the line. So you're taking this risk, opening a restaurant, opening a salon, opening, I don't know, a lemonade stand, right? And you're like, okay, I shouldn't have to deal with that. I'm gonna just go on and talk to the judge myself. You don't do it the right way. That sends the ordinance another 10 days. Another 10 days. Now your money, your time, your effort, the marketing campaign that you got is tied up in this lemonade stand thing, and you like, I'm gonna just roll the dice and take the risk and open the lemonade stand anyway. Right. You get by the first day, you get by the second day. You may get by the third day. The fourth day, something happens where you're caught in the act. Now you've disregarded the act of a judge. You got fines, you got sanctions. Yeah. Even if the mayor of the city is like, hey man, you did something where I'm gonna try to sort of see, possibly I'm gonna give you some advice, but I can't. You didn't follow what was good on paper. Hence, knowing it, the awareness and knowledge becomes an asset in how you make decisions and even how you take risks. Because sometimes you'll know the risk and you'll say, I'm risking that. We gonna go on and we can take this risk, and you recognize also the consequence of the risk. This happens. Here's a classic one that happens oftentimes. And I have a nonprofit. I've done it before, but I did it the up and up way. But oftentimes, it's a lot of establishments that use the nonprofit liquor license. So with a nonprofit organization in the state of Michigan, you can get a liquor license possibly for like a 48-hour period or something like that if you're going to raise funds for something, right? Sometimes the organization lends their licensing for establishment to buy liquor and sell liquor. You can purchase liquor through the liquor distributors, okay? When you do that, the fire marshal is coming to your event. And they're not coming to your event. If your event starts at 8 o'clock, they're not coming at 7. They're not coming at 8 o'clock on time. They're going to come probably when your party is rocking. And the first thing they're going to do is they're going to ask for the license. They're going to ask for the bartender license of whoever you have serving liquor.
You know, and they're also going to check the fire exits to make sure that this space is what was there on the blueprint.
Yeah.
If any three of those things happen where they don't go swimmingly well, what's going to happen is that the fire marshal is going to shut your party down.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Right. And that's true because even with having a building and a lot of people are going into having event spaces, you have to have a certain assigned parking for a certain amount of people that's in there. So you might, you know what I'm saying? So it's a lot of different fire exits.
If you're serving food, it's
certain amount of bathrooms and things like that. Mm-hmm. So like you were saying earlier, and which is in the book,
able-body accessible.
Yes, handicap accessible. Mm-hmm. Exactly. You have the certain handicap spots and things like that. And like you were saying, it's a city charter. But at the same time, going back a little bit about what you were talking about, the discrimination in housing, there were also discrimination in business, having a business in certain cities. So in certain cities, so we have discrimination in cities and as far as housing and businesses, there was laws put in place where certain people had a hard time in getting businesses.
Hard time. The zoning right now for my neighborhood right now, it's connected to Detroit. It's still on the books. Like I say, it's old. It says Negro occupants can't own. Like, it's still a lot of stuff like that on the books. I mean, Tulsa, Oklahoma, as we talk about Black Wall Street. Shout out Gap Band. You dropped a bomb on me. You know what I'm saying? Like, this stuff has historic lens of some of the atrocities of this place, but still having an understanding of knowing how to navigate different things.
Right.
I mean, even Black folks, the right to vote, it's an amendment. An amendment means it's not written into law. It's an amendment. Like, they need to write it into law. Like, I mean, certain things like that. I believe the Voting Rights Act, as it's always renewed, will be renewed. But the question now also eventually comes like, why we got to keep renewing this? You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Like, it's like, you know, like this shouldn't be renewed. So this onus and your passion, obviously, for politics, and it's expanding and growing. What was the linchpin to get you involved in politics? I'm a nerd about certain things. What was it that led you into this space?
Before I answer that, I got to go back to something you said, if you don't mind. You told me about, your area right now with the zoning. What have you done about that? Now, look, not a table's turn. I'm asking a question.
Asking me a question.
So now what have you done about that? Because like I was saying, it's about taking power and not saying, oh, I read something. Hands up. Let's move on. Let me go around that. What have you done? Because the laws that you see in the charter can always be amended by, guess what? You.
I know. Okay, so this is where I'm sounding like one of them celebrity people. It's like right now my legal counsel, because it's real, we're dealing with the whole issue that brought all of this up. So, and I'm gonna reveal this on Detroit is Different because it's been a learning lesson for anybody. If you've ever paid for attorneys or dealt with attorneys, you're always gonna learn from an attorney. You're always gonna learn. So keep that in mind. So we're doing this the right way. We want to get past a couple of these hurdles first, and then we're going to address a lot of this stuff and clean up. We actually have a community town hall meeting that we're partnering with Bridge Detroit for, and that will be May 24th. So Tuesday, May 24th, it'll be a community town hall meeting right in my Alata studio, my lot over there, where we're welcoming people, and we're going to talk about that issue and some other issues over here in the community. And I think that's what's the movie? Aaron Brockovich. It takes sometimes the commitment in maneuvering through these things takes a little bit of, takes some energy, but that's what it is.
Well, that's what your elected officials supposed to do. You have a city attorney that works for the city of Detroit. So when you have those issues, you address it, and they are supposed to, with your taxpayer money, address those laws to better serve you. So you're paying for your own attorney. That's awesome. But you have an attorney that you buy into. As a resident, you buy into your city and legal your mayors and legal counsel. So that is they represent the city. So if you see a law that has discriminatory writings and things like that, and we have new state laws that pretty much exit that out and it has to be changed, you could, that shouldn't take that long for you to address it. Did you address your council? Did you address the person in this district? Or did you say, you know what, I'm going to have a meeting, we're going to talk again, and we're going to eat some food? I mean, those are the mindsets that I'm the type of person that, okay, we're going to talk one time. What you don't like? Okay, now let's do something about it. I know it's not that easy, But how long are we going to talk? How long are we going to have conversations? How long are we going to have barbecues and sit down and dinners and say, this is what we're going to do? Write it down, make it plain, and somebody going to go with the vision. So when we going to start going with the vision? And that's why I wrote this book. You know how I just keep on bringing that up, like just sliding that in. But yeah, so you write it down, make it plain. And so again, the buy-in is the people that you elect to fight for you, to be your voice. Because why are you re-electing these people that you have to pay for your own lawyer? When you're paying taxpayer money, you have a couple of businesses in this area, and you're doing so much for the community. They should be buying into you because you're rebuilding this community. You're helping them do something they don't have time to do. So you have that power. You have power that you did not tap into. You're using it in a certain way that everybody else is using it too. Not saying it's bad and you getting people together, but we can all get people together. But what are we doing with that power? What are we doing with it? Are we talking? But we can create laws. You don't have to be a state senator or a state representative to create a law. You can be an individual person and write a law that goes into, that's a state law for Michigan. You don't have to be in those roles or those titles, but we have to be more engaged in saying, okay, this is what I don't like. Let me find a person that oversees that and see what you're going to do about it. Then address it and then follow up. And then if you can't get anything, then if you have to go to your own lawyer and things like that to find out, then that's the next step. But if you don't hold the people that you vote for accountable, you know what I'm saying? And you're voting for these people, then what are we doing here? You're just voting for them to say, oh, I voted and I stood in line, I did what my grandma told me to do? No, that's why I wrote this book, so you can see what these people are accountable for, to write laws for you, to rewrite laws for you. And if you're not, knowing what these people and their roles are, and you're just voting for them, then why are we getting in line in the first place?
Fair enough.
Get the book.
Okay. I like it. So what led you into politics? What was the catalyst?
You know what? I was a police officer for 11 years, so I always had a heart to serve. Even before titles, I always had a heart to serve my community, give back, and things like that. I moved to Eastpointe, and Eastpointe to me was always that city. You're gonna see somebody jogging, walking their dog, and it was like, hi, So I was like, that's the city I want to move in. It's so quiet, it's so happy, it's so joyful. And then when I moved into my city, I was like, okay, why my car that I parked in my driveway not there no more? So, when I started seeing a crime, increase to a certain level, not a huge one, I said, I want to do something about it, So, yes, I was a police officer and I enforced the laws, but I want to be in a position where I create them too. And that's what led me to doing what, I'm doing today.
Okay. What was it like serving as an officer?
It was very challenging. I say that to say because when I worked for the Wayne County Sheriff's Department, most of the people who was in jail, who were incarcerated for a certain amount of time, they looked like me and you, and that bothered me. I didn't like going to work seeing people that looked like me, who were educated, who were in there for, small crimes and things like that. And you have families and asking, can I get extra food, and asking, can I speak to my family, or asking, can I watch TV like their children? That didn't bring me joy, And so sooner or later I said, this is not where I want to be. I want to be somewhere where I'm teaching people how to be more than just this, teaching people how, this is not the end game. It's more to life than just this. And, when I used to talk to the inmates, I would call them sir and be very respectful because that's who they were, until you came for me, then it was on the popping. But, so, I respected them, not on the popping like, hey, let's go. But, it's about, making sure you have control of that environment, because people can't just call you out your name and things like that, and they're and they're not going to get in trouble for it, because if you don't do nothing about it, then it can cause you harm, especially I'm a small woman and things like that. So we have things that's set up to make sure that you're respectful and we keep things in line and things like that. But other than that, I'm gonna make sure that you a sir all day, And so I didn't enjoy going to work every day, seeing people that look like me and seeing people disrespect another person that looks like them. I didn't understand that, and how do we come from that, and even when I used to talk to the inmates, they just automatically had in their mind, oh, you came from this neighborhood. oh, you must have lived in the suburbs, or you did this, or you had a 2-family household. I had a 2-family household till I was probably the age of 8, and then my mom was a single mom with 3 kids, couldn't barely raise her kids, and we had no food sometimes, and lights was cut off, and my mom never really got to help me with my homework, and I had to raise my own sisters and help my mama pay the bills. I didn't tell you all that because I don't have to, because I carry myself. I don't want that to be my story. That's part of my story, but I don't want to, be where I am and want you to feel sorry for me. That's not my story. That's part of my story. And sometimes we take what helped us be who we are and say, my mom was this. Yes, my mom was a single mom, but that's not what all she was. My mom was a businesswoman. My mom was a strong woman that raised 3 daughters, and then she made a history maker. And she didn't even know what she had, but she did her very best. So that's not her story. She's a single mom, and that's it. A mom that was on welfare, that's it. That's not her story. That's part of her story, but that's not her story. My story is not, I had a single mom, my mom did this. That's part of my story. But my story is, you know what? This is who I was, but this is who I am, and this is who I'm going to be. So let me show you how to do it.
That's powerful. That's powerful. All right. So with that, as we get closer to a close, I don't know what else you want to share, but we definitely want to give people, if they want to connect with you, if they want to get the book, if they want to learn, if they want to pop in council, connect, how do they go about that?
Well, absolutely. Thank you so much so again, Mom, What's a Mayor? You can go to the website, momwhat'samayor.com, and order your book. The book, a regular copy is $19.99. A signed copy is $24.99. And if you want the combo, with the gavel is $29.99. And also you can donate. We take a lot of donations. If you want to donate some books, I go to schools and speak to schools all over the United States, and also get kids to understand what government is. I also going to Princeton next month to speak at Princeton. So God has allowed me to go to places. I said Princeton. When Princeton called me, I said, what's really going on? Also going to Harvard University, and Cambridge. These are places that I was like, never imagined myself going. And so the things that you want, the things that you think you can accomplish, it is reachable. And I want to show you how to do that. You can do all things through Christ that strengthens you. You serve a big God, so think big. So I said that to say, I'm also want to announce I am running for state senator. Wow. And so for the 11th district, so that is Macomb County and part of Wayne County. So I got 8 Mile all the way to 7 Mile between Kelly, closer to Gratiot. So I'm getting some of my, my roots in there. And so I'm very excited. It's my first time running for state senator. And so, and I just want to push that so we can have better education, better schools, better jobs. I want Michigan to be more of a producer and not a consumer of products. We need to bring the money back to our state and start sending it out. So if you live in that area, Eastpointe, Roseville, all the way out, I'll be your state senator. So, if you know anybody that wants to be a part of the team, I need people to walk, knock doors, looking for, your help to making a difference. And again, I can talk about power every day, but, if people standing behind me, we are forced to be reckoned with. So, if you want to email me, go to Mayor Monique Owens @gmail.com. If you have questions about the book, about being a mayor, or, helping you through a campaign and things like that, and helping you better serve your community. But if you want to help me as being the next senator of the state of Michigan, then go to Monique Owens for Senate. @gmail.com. Thank you so much.
That's powerful. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
The city of Detroit has $826 million from the federal government, and Bridge Detroit wants to know how you want the money to be spent. Summer 2021, President Joe Biden's administration and Congress enacted the American Rescue Plan Act. Through this act, Detroit has received funding. Mayor Mike Duggan's administration and the 2021 Detroit City Council made decisions on the spending for these federal funds. Bridge Detroit, in collaboration with Detroit is Different, are now asking where, how, and what are the things Detroiters want to see done with the funding. Starting in May and running through the start of July, we will host a series of open forum discussions throughout the city of Detroit's neighborhood districts. We welcome you to engage our politicians about the money. All these discussions will be held in community houses you trust. This is an opportunity where residents will have their voices heard, captured, and shared in journalism, video, and podcasts. We ask of you to join us on a mission of discovery.